Hello, everybody. Good to see you again. Lesson 5 of the Adult Sabbath School lesson. I just want to get right into it because we've been talking a little bit about nations, kings, and what that all looks like back then versus today. I'm here with Pastor Sasha, Arena, and we're here with me, Monique. And I just want to start with the title of king has just become a title. We spoke a little bit about Nimrod in lesson 4, how he pretty much earned it. He earned that title. Whether we like how he did it or not, he was strong. He had representation in history. He had names behind him. He had nobody to stand against him. Nobody but God, literally. He literally
showed for it.
He showed for it. Nobody stood against him but God. And then now today, our king, he's like 102. And maybe he's not our king, but somebody's king out there. And he doesn't, it's a face. It's just a face. It's not a power anymore.
Symbol almost.
It's a symbol, literally. There's people that make decisions elsewhere on his behalf. Maybe he signs it. Who even knows anymore? Maybe he doesn't even pick up a pen. Is it a stamp now? Before he at least had a piece of wax, maybe blood on something. It meant something to be a king. And now it means nothing, and I have no idea why.
Well, as you noticed, the kings, that's how in many periods of history in the old times, that's how the kings originated. They were strong warriors.
Mm-hmm.
So the purpose of the king was to lead the army. So when they see, Nimrod, they didn't know yet about a war. So
they didn't have nobody to fight.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a different story.
Yeah, they were all one.
Oh, well.
True, because they weren't enemies before, but then something had happened where God was like, yeah, put the fear of man in the animals. And so things changed.
It's an important steps when you look at the progression in history. So remember, Nimrod, we were right after the flood. Okay, so he's just great grandson of Noah. So it's very short after the flood.
They lived really long.
Yeah,
and Noah was still alive too at the time
Noah,
of it all.
remember?
Yeah, literally, dude, literally.
Yeah, when you look at Genesis 11, Monique is right. Abraham knew Noah.
Don't tell me things like that. Let's keep going. I'm not even going to touch on that.
So
yeah, let's skip over that one.
I don't know.
It's too hard to wrap the brain around.
I don't know. Did you know your great grandparents?
I knew my one great grandma.
Okay, well,
for up until I was 6 or 7 years
Did
old.
you, Monique?
Even if
See,
No.
My parents, not only are they older, but my mom was a middle child. So they got pretty far along in the generational line by the time I came around. So I'm pretty sure she was
well, I didn't know my great grandmother too, but my mom just was. My mom is now, I would say, rejoicing over having her first great son, but I don't know anybody who knew his or her great grandparents.
Not possible.
But I don't know how many greats we need to say to get from Abraham to Noah.
let's not get started on that one.
Oh, it's double digits for sure.
Yeah, but nevertheless, it was still not a really long period of time since Nimrod became the king. And, well, he was strong hunter because, first you got this weapon, maybe a dagger, maybe a bow, and he was able to kill some kind of a deer. That's considered to be, you're a strong man. So that's how it was, because just there was no war yet.
Right.
Unfortunately, not for long. So when we get to the history of, ancient Europe, right, in looking at the Germanic tribes, who infiltrated or penetrated into the Roman Empire and stuff like this, and you look at how the kingdoms, Romans were a very organized society, and they called those guys barbarians. But eventually, that's how it went. He was some leader, some strong warrior, was able to defeat like a Roman cohort or legion, whatever, lead his, Germanic horde, as Romans would say, and they defeated the legion. So now this guy is
Famous,
gaining authority. So with the power of a sword, killing that many, now he's the king. So initially, that's what it was. The strongest who is able to kill as many as you can kill to win the battle. You lead and you rule over us. That's how people thought. And this is definitely a progression of how human governance develops. Of course, we get through the time and we run into how kings begin to abuse power.
Yeah.
And how kings begin to be used by the church, and how the popes crowned the emperors and the kings, and people eventually, at least when you are referring to a queen who died at the age of 102, she was an interesting historical personality, Elizabeth II. And of course, by this time, she didn't have any power like Nimrod or like Charlemagne or like Napoleon. She did not. Or like Romanov's Russian dynasty. She did not. So at least in the West, if you're a king in the West, you are more of a symbol rather than a leader.
Right.
In fact, king is not supposed to lead. And now, like somebody like king, there's a king in Sweden, king in Norway, and
It's so confusing.
Of course, Charles the Third, who is the king of Britain, he definitely is very proud of the fact that he's not leading. The parliament is.
Right.
It's such a joke because
It's just so confusing.
it doesn't make any sense. There is no, I don't even want to say
There's no benefits
threat.
that come with it. It's almost like you just have to sit upright and watch your every sneeze.
Literally, and just be the pretty picture that they
It's
need you
almost
to
more
be.
restricting
Wow,
than
that's
beneficial.
what people want. British people love, it's not in American definitely mentality, but British people love when the king comes and that's what the king is used. It's a ceremonial role. It's a
Santa
part of
Claus.
correct.
So then I'm thinking of the children of Israel when they were begging Samuel for a king. Was that a similar motivation, this Western motivation of just somebody to make us look good?
Oh, no, absolutely not. This case is totally different.
So what's their deal?
Their deal is they had a serious situation here. And so let's read about this. 1 Samuel chapter 8. And it's a sad situation which occurred. Chapter 8, verse 1 through 3.
When Samuel grew old, he appointed his sons as Israel leaders. The name of his firstborn was Joel, and the name of his second was Abijah, and they served at Beersheba. But his sons did not follow his ways. They turned aside after dishonest gain and accepted bribes and privileged justice.
So, people were in a very, sometimes you got into, I hear this argument, oh, Israel so unfaithful, they decided to choose the king. That's so, so bad of them. But look at what they were up against.
True. When you put it in this kind of perspective, it does seem like, hey, you've been our one, answer, one way for us to God, direct connectors, essentially. But then your followers are not stepping up to the shoes.
Right. And now I'm able to connect this story a little bit to Babel almost in a sense, but more so Nimrod, because like this whole power thing, right? So I'm thinking of it in the sense of like, yeah, the priests, they were their direct connection to God.
Mm-hmm.
And I can almost imagine, since, the tower was supposed to reach to heaven, Nimrod wanted to be that direct connection to God.
Yeah, you could say so in a sense.
In a sense, or at least in a spiritual sense.
Yeah, or at least an image of.
Right. There we go.
That
like
connection.
Something. There's got to be a word, a symbolic, some kind of way, especially since kings are symbols. This tower was a symbol, and Nimrod wanted to use it to his particular advantage. So now this situation, this structure that they have there's a kink in the armor somewhere, and they're like, we've got to figure out how to solve it. Anytime I see symbol, I think of a symbol, I think of a spiritual, effect. There's some kind of spiritual consequence there. And at least the people recognize that. They do realize that they're kind of in a bad spot. So that's what's making me think, like, what is it about a king though? Like, why not just change priests? Why not just find another priest? Why?
There had to be other priests, were there not?
Why a king?
Well, it wasn't an easy decision, as I said. But this is usually how many people, if we look at the situation in the church, take a look at how they explain to Samuel why they want the king. Let's take a read of verse 5.
They said to him, "You're old, and your sons do not follow your ways. Now appoint a king to lead us, such as all the other nations have." I see where, again, I'm trying really hard to keep in their situation, to remember that they're not in a good spot, but their approach about it is like trying to be like everybody else.
That's what I try to see. Sometimes what happens, they see there was a corruption in Israel.
Right. They're trying to solve it, but
in a godly way.
Yeah, because I feel like this just must be like an innate desire. Because the same way when they were in Shinar and they just kind of settled and like, okay, we have a king, we're fine. They're kind of hitting a wall here, and they kind of want to just retreat back into this, like, we need a king to feel fine again. He'll fix our problems. He'll fix our problems.
That's exactly the point. And here is what I was what I wanted also for us to notice is, here's Israel, corruption, and people want to be like the other countries.
So they just found a way to combine the two issues.
Today, I mean, can we run into the situation when we discover corruption in a church?
Mm-hmm.
And this is where we fall. This is the pit we fall into. We see injustice within a church, but we are not trying to find a godly way of solving it. We resort to a worldly way of solving it, which is getting us into more troubles.
Right.
Yeah, it's definitely very dangerous.
Because even just reading barely any few verses later, it's the verse 7, after Samuel has gone back to God and already talked to God and complained essentially on their behalf, saying, hey, they're asking me all this. God replies to Samuel in verse 7 saying, and the Lord told him, listen to all that these people are saying to you. It's not you that they're rejecting, but they have rejected me as their king, as they have done from the day I brought them up out of Egypt until this day, and so on.
Yeah.
So, yet again, motivation may be decent, but the approach and the solution they're taking is just...
Right. And again, you were saying, I want to give them the benefit of the doubt here. I want to say they're kind of so far off base because of the place that they're at, like, spiritually. Like, I want to say that they're making this decision because they haven't been being fed spiritually.
But they had Samuel all this time.
So, like, why weren't you just... No,
Use your resources.
No, Samuel's not here yet.
Or not Samuel.
No, he is.
That's Samuel. Oh, that is Samuel
they
we're
had
talking to.
Samuel. Samuel was the prophet. Remember one thing. Samuel was the prophet. He was the high priest.
And here's the thing. And they didn't like him because he was old. Okay, I think that's part of it too.
It's not about didn't like him. He was probably already not physically fit to do what needs to happen, what needs to be done.
And they knew that a leader had to be fit. This is good. This is good. Now I can advocate for them. Now I can advocate for them because they knew that they needed a leader that was strong, fit, and knew the right thing to do. Like
pray for a new
good old
prophet.
king. Pray for a new prophet. Pray for a new prophet. Like,
yeah,
but and from their perspective, yeah, at least when they look around to the other nations, if they're looking to what a leader's supposed to be, they see their kings and they see somebody that's young, that's strong, and that's, I don't know, maybe they were imagining... Backbone, you know? And Samuel just doesn't fit... He doesn't fit the bill.
But they were never meant to fit the bill.
Exactly. And good old-fashioned kings before, like, were much like Nimrod, big and strong, and had, some backing to them.
I see where you headed.
You see where I'm going?
Yeah,
okay,
you're headed to Saul, who was tall and handsome.
Right. He looked good.
And he had but I want to stick a little bit here, a little curveball. And this curveball actually is about the wonderful character of God. So God says, they rejected me, not you. Don't worry, Samuel. It's not about you. It's about me.
Exactly.
But go with me to the book of Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy 17, 14, and 15.
When you enter the land the Lord your God is giving you and have taken possession of it and settled in it, and you say, let us set a king over us like all the nations around us. Be sure to appoint over you a king the Lord your God chooses. He must be from among your fellow Israelites. Do not place a foreigner over you, one who is not an Israelite. So the king still had to be chosen by God.
Oh, yeah. So as you can see, it's like God is a good father. He's acting here like a good father. In other words, a good father will allow a child to make decisions even they're bad.
Yeah.
That's the only way we learn sometimes, because God didn't, fall into rage and said, oh, I'm going to destroy those disobedient people. No. Actually, in the book of the law, this is the law of Moses, well, he says to Moses, if people say, appoint the king over us, that's what they eventually said under Samuel.
Yep.
So what do we have? About 300 years passed. Give us the king. So
did not take very long.
It was, but the situation was foreseen,
right,
in the Bible. The only thing after all of this, what is very important here, and that's really, really important, what the king must do. Take a look, verses 18 through 20.
When he takes the throne of his kingdom, he is to write for himself on a scroll a copy of this law, taken from that of the Levitical priests. It is to be with him, and he is to read it all the days of his life, so that he may learn to revere the Lord his God and follow carefully all the words of this law and these decrees, and not consider himself better than his fellow Israelites, and turn from the law to the right or to the left, then he and his descendants will reign a long time over his kingdom in Israel.
Yeah, so as you can see, here is the very big difference between the king of Israel and the kings of all other nations. Nimrod, all others emperors, all these rulers, dictators. The king was supposed to be a subject of what?
God.
Of the law.
Okay.
Of divine law.
Yeah, pretty much. And I guess, and now you're bringing me to another difference between old king and current king, where they're exempt from the law.
Yeah. Actually, it's kind of interesting how the British, and especially, the largest kingdom in the world today. We have many kingdoms. Thailand is a kingdom.
It is?
Yeah. They have a king.
What? I need to read more.
Yeah. It's a monarchy.
Okay.
Snooze.
You have look. You have something like Emirates,
Yeah.
Qatar, all these countries like Saudi Arabia. That's the kingdom. Oh boy, this is probably, I think, I was just thinking, the largest absolute monarchy in the world today is Saudi Arabia.
Probably. That one I could agree with. That one makes sense at least.
Yeah. But on the other hand, we have this kind of, it's called constitutional monarchy.
Yeah.
That's what the United Kingdom is, So you take, this Saudi Arabia versus United Kingdom, absolute monarchy versus, constitutional monarchy.
Right.
So, and then you get all this in between, like Thailand and a couple other countries where it's kind of, a hybrid system. But what's very important issue here is when God allowed Israelites to have the king, which actually led to David, and David was a type of Christ. In fact, Messiah is the son of David. So what you have is, number one, king is a subject of divine law, and number two, which is very important, king is not a spiritual leader.
Why not?
Take a look at the story of one king who was actually not a bad king. Go with me to 2 Chronicles chapter 26, verse 3.
Uzziah was 16 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 52 years. His mother's name was Jechaliah. She was from Jerusalem. He did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, just as his father Amaziah had done. He sought God during the days of Zechariah, who instructed him in the fear of God. As long as he sought the Lord, God gave him success.
Yeah, so as you can see, he was doing right in the eyes of the Lord until he didn't.
Oh.
So let's continue reading the story. Pick up verse 16.
But after Uzziah became powerful, his pride led to his downfall. There it goes. He was unfaithful to the Lord his God, and entered the temple of the Lord to burn incense on the altar of the incenses.
Yeah. As you can see. Well, who is supposed to do
The priest. Why would he do it?
More so, the high priest, because he had a censer, and burning the incense on the altar with a censer. It means he's supposed to enter the most holy, like the high priest supposed to do. So the guy decided to combine the position of the high priest.
Just out of his pride?
As it says here, he ended up pretty bad. We can read about this. He enters the kingdom, and so here is the priest. The high priest is very upset about this. It says, this is what they say, verse 18.
They confronted King Uzziah and said, "It is not right for you, Uzziah, to burn incense to the Lord. That is for the priests, the descendants of Aaron, who have been consecrated to burn incense. Leave the sanctuary, for you have been unfaithful, and you will not be honored by the Lord God."
You see? There's one thing about Israel and about godly system. So, king does not have absolute power.
Right.
Try to confront the king of Saudi Arabia. Your body will be chopped like one of the journalists.
Yeah. You're not gonna
So
make it far.
here, the high priest confronts. I mean, not the high priest, but the whole priest. King, what in the world are you doing? This is, and they have a right because they have a Torah, they have the law, and they know this is not right. Well, he's not listening. So here is verse 19. That's the outcome of it.
Uzziah, who had the censer in his hand, ready to burn incense, became angry. While he was raging at the priests in their presence before the incense altar in the Lord's temple, leprosy broke out on his forehead.
God intervened.
He had it coming.
So, at the very, very end, he lived out his his rest of his years, in a separate house outside in a country, all by himself.
Was it really worth it, man?
Like, literally. So that's making me think, even though him and David are very different, about how, though David was righteous, he had his pitfalls and stuff like that, but he had great intentions in wanting to build a temple, a temple for the Lord. And God's like, yeah, no, too much blood on your hands. Do not touch my house. So is that have anything to do with the title and position of a king as well, and not so much just David's past, but what kings were kind of allowed and expected to do, and how far away they were supposed to be from that spiritual title and that spiritual relationship between the people and God?
Well, Bible gives us the model of the king to demonstrate what our heavenly king is. Two things which is in this model, because model is still human. We have to always remember that, and just to summarize, we have to remember one thing. We humans cannot make a perfect system of governance.
Right.
No.
So take a look at going back to the world around us. So you got Britain, and people of Britain realized eventually that having a king with absolute power, that's Henry VIII. You heard of Henry VIII, who basically decided to become a sort of a pope. That's the Church of England. So he says, I'm the head of the church. So he became a pope for all his subjects, besides the king, right? He had absolute power. Eventually, this didn't work. Britain learned democracy, became constitutional monarchy. When British colonies in 1770s, 1760s had this constant friction with metropolis, they eventually overthrew the British king, the Boston Tea Party, and said, we don't want any king here. We are democracy. We create the position of a president with the limited power. We have 3 branches of power. President is only executive power. He's the commander-in-chief, yes, but no judicial power. Like the people in the time of Samuel, let have us the king who will judge over us.
Okay, so yeah, because that was where his power kind of like resided. Like the king was more of a judge and less of a priest, kind of? Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So when we go back to Israel, in Israel, yes, king was executive power, commander-in-chief, and a chief judge.
Okay.
But the spiritual power he could not touch.
And that's just the model. That's the model.
That was the model.
Okay.
That was the model. So both models, here we have an Israeli monarchy, all covenant monarchy, theocratic state. Here today we have, I would say America is the best democracy you could ever get. But I remember back in, 12, 15 years ago, President Obama used to say about the oil, you cannot drill yourself to energy dependence. So I can rephrase here the words of President Obama and say, we cannot vote ourselves, under democracy, to turn this country into the kingdom of heaven.
Okay.
You know what? That puts it in a... Yep.
Never were there truer words. And if I try to say anything after that, I'm just going to confuse myself. And that's the last thing I want to do at this point. After everything that we've learned, let's take that knowledge, meditate on it, and let it enrich our relationship with God, with his law, and with the people next to us. Thanks so much for joining. Your time that you spent with us is precious. And please comment down below what you received from it. And subscribe to the channel, like the video, hit the bell notification so we see you next time. And until then, bye-bye.